everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Shauna. I manage the uh, customer account representative team. So welcome to this lunch and learn. Couple of administrative things just to get out of the way, and it's repetitive of the recording that we just saw. If you have any questions during the presentation, just click that Q&A icon there at the bottom, and we'll be answering that through this series. My name is Shauna, and Kat Lewis will also be presenting today. She's going to be doing the heavy lifting. She's one of our senior solution consultants. She's actually been a master control user in the past. She comes from industry, so she's been in your shoes. She knows what that looks like and feels like. And just look at her. She looks so sincere. I look like they just said it's happy hour at Flanagan's and it's all you can eat wings. Actually, I feel like that picture's a little bit dated if you're actually seeing my video yet, I don't know. But I was on a WebEx earlier today and I thought I look like freaking Prince Valiant. I went in and found this picture on the web. I was going for the left and I went right. And so anyway, that's just the world we live in with Zoom and WebEx. You're not here to talk about my haircut, so I'm gonna move right along. We're hoping that today, the key takeaways, you'll find the advantages of a single platform. It enables the removal of silos. It enables deeper digitization, the creation of a closed loop QMS. It helps you establish best practices more readily, more easily. It allows for streamlining third-party audits. And with better and more telling data, you're able to make better data-driven decisions in your organization and mitigate all the risks that you get exposed to in the industry that you're in. And all of this is because we really do believe in our mission statement to help you bring life-changing products and make them available to more people sooner. Never before, at least in my lifetime, has this been so prevalent as it is now with COVID. And the days and weeks and months that product was able to get out sooner to people meant saving literally thousands and thousands of lives. So we take it seriously. What you do matters to us. What you do matters to the world. And it's more and more relevant and prevalent today. We believe that our approach of a single platform increases the speed of release, rather than a piecemeal approach with disparate systems and applications. You're able to have them all on a single platform with connectivity that's native to the application, so you're not having to build APIs and those kinds of things that have to be monitored and rebuilt. It makes the architecture and the engineering and your use of it so much better. It also enables every company to take advantage of the new digital world that we live in. We've come from paper, we put it in digital, we're now more connected than ever. And in our system, you're connected on that common platform. So you can make more intelligent decisions based on better data that goes deeper and gives you a better insight into what's going on. Gartner has recorded recently that 60% of all quality organizations have made this move over into the digital format in the last 2 years to better align with their businesses and the imperatives that they have there. And why are they doing that? Because this data is important, and this data helps you know what's working and what's not, and what you can do better and what you need to do more of. With Master Control, we're going to be bringing you more and more of this data, and on that common platform, it means even more. These screenshots I'm showing you are just actual usage that shows how many training tasks have been completed, how many documents have been viewed, how many collaborations have been launched. Those kinds of things are critically important. Master Control on that common platform also recognizes that not one size fits all. And so we have different bundles and different packages to help you get what you need most for where you are in the life cycle of your own company, whether it's the quality base that's just docs, or standard with docs and training, or quality complete that has pretty much everything quality centric. And then we also have, of course, our manufacturing solution. That is an add-on and has made a big difference in a lot of companies and their production records. So we're really excited about where we're going. But more than me talking about it, it's more important for you to see it. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Kat, and we'll have her start the demo.
Okay, everybody, hello and welcome. This is just a nice little segue, a nice reminder to kind of reiterate what Shauna was saying with everything being on that one platform, soup to nuts, making it a lot easier. And then she talked about not needing to worry about APIs. I always like to talk about also how the expansion makes that easier with it on one platform. Because, if you've got just docs or just docs and training now and you decide to add something else in, with it already being installed in the background, we just have to turn those licenses on and then you guys are off and running, a little bit of configuration, of course, but it's not having to wait for another install or something. So that makes that really nice for you guys as well, having that single platform. Now, in this view here, you'll notice that quality and supplier are separate. When I'm demoing, I always bring supplier in because after 15 years of being on the quality side of manufacturing, supplier is just as key. So we're going to talk about that as well today. It just kind of comes in, even though it's not, technically as far as sales goes, it's that separate suite or solution. I always like to pull it in because quality cares just as much about their suppliers as they do everything else. Now I'm going to kind of demo today a little bit differently than what you might be thinking that it's going to be. It's going to be more of a day in the life type of demo. And the main reason I'm doing that is because it really shows the connectivity of everything. So as you're looking at the screen here, on the left-hand side, you have what our quality events list, or what I like to affectionately call when things go wrong. But we also have, we've got complaint and deviation, non-conformance, NOAS. These are the forms that we have, our enhanced forms. We also have another one called an event report. That event report form is also really cool because it can sit as a precursor here so that maybe instead of people having to say, is this a deviation or is this a non-conformance? Instead, they can just launch out that event report and say, hey, this is what happened. On the second step, then somebody can look at that and say, oh, hey, this is a deviation, launch off that deviation. Or this is a non-conformance, launch that off. Or if it doesn't fit in any of these buckets, let's just investigate this on this event report form. So even though it's not here part of this, I do always like to mention it as somebody that used that form a lot as a customer. It's a really great way to capture everything that happens without your people having to worry about what isn't. And so it just makes things a lot smoother for them. Plus, sometimes things happen that don't fit in the bucket. And so that would allow you to investigate those things inside the system. But within here, if you think about this, let's just look at deviation as an example. This is going to give you, so as I'm going through here, I'm going to show you our forms and the different things here as I'm kind of showing you the flow. But keep in mind, these are just examples. Our forms are super configurable. So there are things that I might not have turned on in my examples that you would want turned on, or there might be something that I've got on that you want off. So there are a lot of configuration options within our forms. You can change field names. So if we call something department and you want to call it something else, you can go in and change the field name. I mean, just a lot of configuration options. I could probably spend 30 minutes on every single one of our forms, just going through all of the different options and how each form works. Obviously, today I don't have time for that, so I'm going to give it a little bit higher look. So if we start with deviation, just as an example, with our forms, of course, you're always going to be having that current or the auto assign the next number. It might seem weird to have the current step in here, but the reason it's in here is because every single form field is reportable. So it's very easy for you to run reports out of here saying, show me all of my deviations, the step they're on. That's step due date, because each step along the workflow has a configurable number of days that's due. And I say it's configurable because at the template level, you can, if we give you out of the box, maybe you have a day to complete a step and you want to have 5 days. Well, you just go in and change number 1 to a 5 and we're good to go. Now on the individual forms themselves, if you need more time, then you can always ask for an extension request by just clicking this little button. It opens the sub form. You can say, hey, I need this much more time. Obviously, the approvers of the form don't have to give it to you because they can reject it and say, no, get your work done on time. Or they can approve the date you requested or even approve a different date. So if you've got, maybe somebody asks for a couple of days and as the approver, you know, it's going to take them longer than that. You can go ahead and give them that extra time right then. You don't have to wait for another form to come through. But all of our forms, they're going to have that same functionality in them. As you move into this particular deviation form, of course, there's a lot of workspace to be able to grab things. You'll notice there's no drop-down arrows. That's because even though tables are populating a lot of our fields, we use autocomplete. So you start typing in them, and then that is going to filter down that list. So if you've got a really long list, you don't have to scroll through the whole thing. Our date fields all have logic in them. You can't say you're clairvoyant and this is going to be happens tomorrow. When you get to some of your subforms, like an action item, if you wanted to send somebody out a subtask, you can send them an action item telling them to go do something. On those, your due dates, they can't be tomorrow or yesterday. So we do make you be nice to your people and say, you know, it could be due today, but it can't be due yesterday. But at any rate, as we flow through here, you can see we're just a lot of great space to be able to capture around things that went wrong. Once you get into this deviation, below deviation category here, though, that's when a lot of optional things come in. And we actually have a lot of different impact areas. In this case, I just have these two. But you could also turn on process. If you are a clinical customer, you could turn on clinical areas so that you could have a clinical deviation. In the same form, if you do clinical and manufacturing, you actually have one form, both scenarios, just depends on where you would say yes or no to. And then you can then even have the system say, if it's a clinical, I want it to route to my clinical team. If it's a manufacturing one, I want it to route to my manufacturing team. So you can really configure these forms to meet your needs. And there's about 8 different impact areas that goes way beyond the ones that I've mentioned here. But you're going to gather the information. A lot of our forms also have an area for immediate actions. This is super nice because, of course, it's very easy to be able to see what was done. But if you take it one step further, you could then run reports. How often are people doing what they're supposed to do versus I have to send them an action item to tell them to go do it? That allows you to give kudos where kudos are needed and kind of, you know, get somebody to remind their teams, hey, there's a process to follow here and you need to start following this. And then when it comes to the investigation, this is that high level investigation. We don't want to end up in death by CAPA where you're doing those intense root cause investigations for every single deviation or every non-performance or what have you. So on all of our forms, this is a higher level investigation. Now, these guys right here on my deviation form, this is just my example of things that I want them to investigate. You're going to use a table to populate this, and it can have a whole lot more than what I show. But on every single one of our forms, once you get done with the investigation, you're going to have a risk assessment that you're going to do, because that risk assessment is what helps you determine what's my path forward. Now, you can use our risk assessment if you want, or if you have your own frequency and impact, or even a severity, occurrence, and detection that you use, you can use your own as well. But as you're coming through and you're doing that risk assessment, once that's done, that, like I said, is going to help you determine your path forward. Is it a low risk or even a medium low risk? And you're just going to close that event. You don't need to do anything more with it. You know, maybe you're going to do a little bit of tracking and trending, but we have reports. Keep in mind, everything is reportable, but even better, you have an event analyzer. This event analyzer will do all of your tracking and trending for you so that you don't have to do that. But other times, we need to lob it over to our CAPA team. Now, we do have a 2-step process here that you can choose to use. I personally love the issue review because, again, it gives you some objective information to help you stay out of death by CAPA. So with the issue review, if you launch it from, let's say on your deviation form, you had a high enough risk that you decided to launch this over to your CAPA team. The information from your deviation is going to map over. This particular example mapped over from a complaint. But the nice thing about it, anytime you launch form from another form, you always have a hyperlink back to that parent form, but it's also going to bring over that initial information. You don't have to redo this. The risk assessment will also map over, but of course they can adjust this because sometimes your CAPA team, maybe they have a little bit more information on criticality or the frequency or something, and so maybe that adjusts a little bit. But here's where the objective information comes into play. If you look in this what to do area down here, based on this score, it is going to adjust. So if this is a low risk, it's in the green area, if you will, then this is going to say CAPA is not required. You know, there is absolutely no reason to go into a full root cause investigation here. When it starts falling into your medium risk, or that yellow zone, as I like to call it, then this is going to say CAPA potentially is required. And then it's going to give you some additional information to determine, do you need to go to CAPA? If you do need to go to CAPA, these are the things that you might want to look at. You know, do we need just a corrective or maybe a preventative as well? And then when it falls into any of that high risk area, then it is going to say CAPA is required, like this one does. It is going to check this box and you cannot uncheck it. It is going to require that on your disposition step here, you move into that full root cause investigation. Obviously, if it's not in that red, you can still determine, hey, we're going to just fix and document it. You're going to close, track, and trend it. If you select close, track, and trend, you can actually launch that analyzer straight from here. Again, making life easy for letting the system do that trending for you. Otherwise, you would just click this little button right here, and you're going to launch off that CAPA. Now, when it comes time to do the full CAPA, where you're going into that root cause investigation, we do give you a really great workspace for this, where you can keep track of your team members if you want. You can turn this off. And by the way, when I'm coming through and I'm talking about turning something on or off, you're literally just typing off or on in a table. So very easy to manage. But below that, we've got a few different investigation methods. Most of us like to start with something simple. And so maybe we're starting with those 5 whys. We're doing 5 questions, 5 answers to help us get to that root cause. Now, if that does not get us there, then you could go into a comparative analysis where it's that really super in-depth. It's here, but not there. You go through tests and clues. Now, obviously, if you use other methods than those two, you can just click method. It gives you some generic fields to fill in, and then you would attach the information at the bottom of the tab, because at the bottom of every single tab in a form, you're going to have links and attachments. Links are things that you can link up within the system. Attachments are things that you would add in outside of the system. And the attachments is, of course, file agnostic. So it could be a picture of something if you need it to be, or any file type that you would need. But once you get through, you'll notice with the comparative analysis, when I turned it on, I still below here have the 5 whys. So it's not that when I said, oh, I'm going to have to go into a comparative analysis now because I couldn't get to it here, that it got rid of this guy here. It just has them both displaying now. But if I keep going down here below that, you've got those root cause category, subcategories if you want. Again, these are hitting data structures, so that makes it, or tables, if you will, makes it very easy for you to be able to report on this information. You can send out subtasks if you need to. You know, just because you're the one filling in all the information doesn't mean you're the one that's doing all the work. Feel free to launch off action items. You have up to 30 of them, I believe, that you can launch off from here, so that you can really assign those tasks out however many you need to when you're investigating. And I'll be showing you a little bit more about that action item here in just a second. But then when you get done with that root cause investigation, of course, your next step is going to be looking at your corrective and your preventative action plans. Now, just so that you know, as far as the workflow goes, you've got your root cause investigation that leads to the plan step, of which you're going to lay out your plan. Then somebody's going to come in and they're going to review those two. Before you move into the implementation, someone's going to come in and just do that double check. Did you get to that root cause? Did your plan, is it going to actually resolve it, whether that's just to eliminate it or diminish it, but is it going to resolve that? And then once that's approved, then you'll actually be launching off any of those tasks that you might have. But when you're setting it up, you'll see here, we've got these 4 areas. You've got your corrective action and your preventative action plan, where your corrective action, you know, you're laying out your plan, your effectiveness check. This is an optional area, but if you needed to inform somebody because they've got an impact on anything that's going on with their stuff, then you can record those details. This guy here, whether it's going to eliminate it or diminish it, this is a key reporting indicator. because you can run a health check, if you will, on your CAPA process and say, how often are we able to eliminate our root causes versus just being able to diminish them? And if we're only able to diminish them, is it because the nature of our business makes it so we can't eliminate them? Or maybe do we need some training to figure out how to redo our plans to make it so we can eliminate them? So the action item areas that I've been talking about as I've been going along, this is what every time you hit the plus, it's going to open up a section like this, where again, you're pulling some data in. This is again a table. Type in your title. You'll have some task description information. You will assign it to somebody. This is role based, so they can't just assign it to their friend Karen. And then you'll give them a due date. This is where that date needs to be. It has to be today or later. You can't say this was due yesterday. Do make you be nice to people. At any rate, then once you're done, you'll just click a button. It launches off that action item, and it allows you to enter in some more information if you needed to here. Of course, it's going to have a link back to the parent so that it's very easy. If you're in the action item actually completing it, you can go see what's going on with that CAPA. You can give it a criticality, really helps for people that are completing their tasks know how urgent is this, the priority of that task. You also can add in additional approvers. It will always come back once your assignee has completed. They will put some information on this tab saying, hey, this is what I did, the date that they completed it, attach any supporting documentations or link anything up if they need to. But then it's always going to come back to the person that launches it. If you want other people to approve it, you can just add them in here too. So if maybe there's a couple of people that need to approve that, you can add those guys in.
Hey, Kat.
Yes, ma'am.
It's okay. We've got a couple of questions that are kind of pertinent to where you are. The first one was, can you limit how many times someone requests an extension due date or an extended due date?
On CAPA, you can. You not only can say over the life of the CAPA, they only have this many. You also can escalate it if you want to. On the other forms, no, but on the extension request, there is a counter. So whoever is approving it is going to know how many times of extension requests been entered for this particular form through its life cycle so that they can keep an eye on that.
And then for CAPA again, the risk matrix, is that preset by the software or is that something that can be adapted by the company? Customizable?
Yeah, so we do have a preset frequency and impact. However, if you don't like this and you want to use a different one, you can. Or if you use severity, occurrence, and detection instead of frequency and impact, you also can use that one as well. So you've got a few different options there.
Great. And then the last one, can you launch an unplanned deviation from an NCR if it's determined later that the record should be an unplanned deviation instead? So can you switch it back?
So you can launch an NCR from a deviation, but you can't launch a deviation from a nonconformance. But what you could do is link it so that you have your nonconformance form linked to your deviation. So it's easy for people to see that it came together, and then stop your nonconformance form. You would actually just abort the workflow. It's still going to be there for your records, but the workflow wouldn't continue. You would just abort it, link them up together so that they can see what was going on with each other if you wanted to. But that's where that event report really comes in handy, because then somebody that knows if it's a deviation or a nonconformance are the ones that are actually launching it off. Your general users that are the ones that are in the trenches that are actually reporting that something went wrong, they just report what went wrong. Somebody else determines what that action actually needs to be.
Last question, and then I'll let you move on. For action items, will the date complete auto-populate in the originating record once the assignee signs off in the action item and they have completed the task?
So there is a date complete field that they will enter. It's not automatic. In the form itself, no. The CAPA form, the date complete does not get automatically entered because it is possible that that form is going to get rejected. So we don't want to have the date complete that the user said, hey, I completed this on such and such a date. They sign off on it. It then is going to go back to the originator for them to review that, because they may need to reject it back because maybe they completed what they thought they were supposed to do, but they missed something or they just didn't get it quite right. So we reject it back. So the functionality doesn't automatically bring it in. The person that's approving it, they would put that data in.
Thanks, Cap.
Mhm. Okay. So oftentimes the corrective and preventative actions, of course, are going to have changes that are going to happen. If you are using our management of change form, you can launch that off straight from there. If it's something beyond a document approval, if it's just, or a document change, I should say, if it's just a document change or document changes, because you could launch more than one change off, you could just launch those document changes right from your form. So instead of leaving your form or making a note and in your plan saying, we're going to make a change to a document form or to a document, and then leaving and going over to the documents module to then grab the record that needs to be changed, you actually can just launch the document packet straight from your form. And you can have as many of those packets launched off as you want, or you also can launch off a more robust management of change form, where you're going to have your change request that lays out exactly what needs to be done or what you want to have done. You're going to have a change review, because somebody, or oftentimes, I should say sometimes, people do ask for unicorns and rainbows. And so we have somebody look at this and they can say, no, there is no way we're even looking at this, and they can cancel it and the workflow is going to stop right here. Or they can approve it, in which case it would move into your impact assessment. Here's another area we don't tell you how to do your business. You are going to be able to set up 20 different areas here. And along with saying these are the areas that people need to look at, you're also going to be able to launch off your own functional area assessment. To build these forms out, you're going to use our eForm Builder. Our eForm Builder is a really cool, in this case, I'm going to be showing you an example of an inspection, but I'll be honest, when I was a customer, I use this for everything. The eForm Builder will create very simple HTML forms, simple not in the fields or what have you, but there's no logic behind them. So you can't have like, if this happens, then this is going to happen over here. But you can use this form builder and it's just a spreadsheet. You fill out the spreadsheet with your tabs, your sections, your fields. You can make them required or not required, and you can have lots of different fields here. But you fill this out, and we create this for you. So you just bring this into master control as a process template, and the system will automatically create this form. Now, this is an inspection example, and oops, went too far back, sorry. And in here, I was showing you an example for the impact assessment, but just keep in mind, you can use that for anything, HR forms like PTO requests or anything that you would want to keep track of the information in an electronic format, because reports on those eForms work the exact same way as reports on your any form that you get from us. So you can run reports on every single field in those forms. But when it comes to the implementation section within our change control form, you of course can launch off action items again. But just like on our CAPA form, you can make those document changes straight from here. So you click this button, it's going to launch off a type of packet that you've selected. The nice thing about it is once it's launched off, you then can track from here as well. You hit refresh packet list, and then you can go out and you can track those forms or those packets, sorry, on the document side. So you don't always have to leave your forms, go to the documents module, find that record, etc. You just launch them straight from there, which means you can track them straight from there. And I think this is a good way to just kind of briefly segue over the other areas of show you, you launch that packet off. I'm sure all of you guys have lots of information around the documents module, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. We actually do have an up and coming event on, it's called the Quality Hour, sorry. It's called the Quality Hour, and it's going to go over things that you can maybe improve in your document module configuration, things like that. That's up and coming. You can find that information on our website, of course. But just something to keep in mind with the documents module, there is a few things in here that relates to training. If you're not aware of it or you're not using it, on the document info card, you may have seen, maybe not, this little guy right here. This here is interacting over with the training module, because the training tasks launch off when you get that last stamp of approval on the workflow. At that exact same time, unless you say yes here, then that is when your record becomes released. So everybody, if you have them going out simultaneously, everybody that tries to review that record until they get that training task done is going to get that message that says, hey, you have to complete your training task first. So to prevent everybody from getting that message the exact same time your training task hits, you can turn on this defer release by saying yes, and then enter a percentage here. This can be anywhere between 70 and 100%. And then the system will keep an eye on this percentage. And when that percentage of training tasks have been completed, then the system will automatically release your record. And that way, at least some of the people can get those tasks done before they start getting that message. The other thing that I'd like to just kind of remind people is, if you're not using them yet, using our event packets, so that with our change control or change request step on a workflow, people always have to ask for permission before they actually go changing that record. So they, say, hey, this is what I want to change. This is why I want to change it. Any other data that you would want in there. That way you don't have a bunch of draft records sitting out there where people don't start working on something and then get told, oh, no, we don't want you to make this change. But like I said, in the quality hour, that's coming up if you want more information on the docs module. But since I know that you guys all have it already, I'm just going to keep going forward. So when you think about training, if you haven't used our training or seen our training module, we've simplified it as much as anybody can simplify training. Training is always a somewhat complex activity that somebody has the fun of doing. But within our system, we've simplified it to 3 main areas. You've got your training courses, job codes, which is our term for a group of individuals with like training needs, so similar to a role. And then, of course, you've got your trainee. Now, you are going to have multiple job codes in your system, and trainees are going to be assigned to more than one. If you just use these 2 here as an example, so everybody in the system is going to be in the corporate job code, because there's always classes like, or courses like safety training or HR Play Nice with each other that people have to take. But then on top of that, you're also going to be in a positional one. Some people use departmental one. How you set it up is up to you. But if you think of Jane and Joe, let's just say Jane is in, they're both in quality, but Jane is a supervisor and Joe is just a general tech. So they're both going to be in the corporate one. They both might be in a quality department one, but then they also would be in their own positional one. Now, let's say Joe gets promoted to a supervisor. All that the training coordinator has to do is move Joe from his tech position code to the supervisor position code. And then the system is going to do a gap check. He's going to look at everything that they've already taken as a tech, and then everything they need to have as a supervisor. If there is a gap, then the system will launch those training tasks out. But nobody has to go and grandfather him in for anything he's already done, or the system's not going to make him repeat anything. It just does a gap check, sends out anything new. Using start dates and prerequisites, you can determine exactly how people are going to get those training tasks. So maybe they start getting them a few days after they are in a new job. And then once they start launching off, they have to complete track 1 before they can get course 2, before they can get course 3. You can really determine exactly how people are going to get their training tasks here. Now, when it comes to the courses, the first thing you're going to determine is that content. Is that content inside or outside master control? Because it could be something that you just purchased from somebody, that safety video, and that's just added to it. So it does not have to be in master control's docs module, for example, in order for the content to be trained on and tracked within our training module. You can determine how often they need to train on it. Is it just when there's a new record change? Do you need to retrain on it every year? Or is it something that you retrain on every, 365 days or something? So you've got a lot of different options. You also can make things elective. And then to make things even more robust, we have classes for those group training. And anytime you need to, you can add an exam, and exams can be as robust or as simple as you need them to be, because you can have in as many questions as you want. You can determine if they can take retake. Is it closed book? Do you want to put a time limit on it? Do you want to make it random? Answering those questions or setting them up very easy. These are 2 examples. You also have matching, numeric, and sequential. But this is how easy it is to set those questions up. A little bit of typing here, give it a point value. This does not have to be a 1. You can do weighted exams. You can make it so that they are required. If you're doing random, you can fail the exam entirely if you fail this question. As you can see, you can set up some pretty darn robust exams when needed. But as far as your users go, it's very simple for them to actually take their training course, because they're going to come in. Now, if you don't have an exam, it just doesn't show. Otherwise, it would move forward, or and they would just need to open those materials. And then if they don't have an exam, overview and sign off would it be enabled. If they do have an exam, then they're given a little bit of high information, but it's very easy for them to just walk through this, selecting the answers, etc. By the way, anytime you need to, you can add an image to an exam question if it helps either explain the question or helps them, like it does in this one, select the answer. Add images to any question you need to. But when they get done, they're going to be let known, or we're going to tell them what they get correct, what they get incorrect. And then, of course, when they're done, they would sign off entering that electronic signature. As you can see, it's really easy for your users. Now, when it comes to gathering data out, we of course have, we call it job code status. Most people would just refer to this as a training matrix. The really cool thing about this is these are hyperlinks into the folders or into the courses. So it's very easy to get that data out. Now, if you come back here and you think about this, this is done now, and we're moving into the effectiveness checks. The event analyzer again comes into play. You set up a query, whether it is on an e-form or it's on one of our out-of-the-box forms, that query is going to work there. So you don't have to do anything special for those e-forms. But you set up the query and then you forget about it. The system's going to let you know when it finds anything. Then, of course, and that, of course, can be part of your effectiveness checks as well. When your effectiveness checks are done, of course, QA is going to come in and review everything. But as you can see, soup to nuts, this gives you closed loop. Kind of before I move into risk, supplier, and audit, are there any questions?
There was one question. I was actually asking for a little bit of clarification. They ask, is SCORM training included? I'm betting they're asking if SCORM courses can be part of Master Control or be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we are SCORM compliant. So we don't offer the content, but you can bring that content in. So if you're using ComplianceWire or what have you, for your users, they won't even notice that that content is coming from another site because it will just come right into Master Control. They'll take the exam right there from their training task inside Master Control.
Thanks, Kat. And then there was another question back on quality events. I answered it, but I think I better check my math. They asked, the comment was that it seems like we're using NCR and deviations interchangeably. And they asked, how do we define that? And I said that mostly the clients kind of define whether they're going to call an event a deviation or nonconformance. But
the forms kind of would actually lend to it. So a non-conforming material, your fields are around the materials. So it is a material. Whereas, yeah, your deviation might affect a product, but your investigation, let me go back to the non-conformance for a second. You can see on here, you even have like your disposition and stuff. So, and you can bring your MRB board into your forms if you want to. So there is that. So deviation most often is referred to as a you're deviating from a process, that type of thing. Whereas your non-conforming is it's not a lab test, but it's failing some kind of test, whether that's receiving tests, like organoleptic or something like that kind of testing, but not like an OS type test. there's
I'm glad
something
I'm
wrong
glad
with
I
the
passed
material.
that by you. My answer was dumb. Then we also got another question, and they just said at their company, their users resist the idea of taking exams. Do we have any sort of recommendation to help users be more comfortable in adapting to taking exams in the system? I'll just give my 2 cents. We do have clients who kind of make it fun. They ask funny questions. It's not all just about what they're training on. And so people will actually go through the exams to see what goofy things are coming up. But I don't know if you have something too, Kat.
No, I think the hardest part about exams is people get, there's pressure. So, I always recommend when you're new to exams, don't put time limits, don't make them closed book. As your users get used to them, have them a little bit more open so that it's easy, and always start simple. And then you can quiz them more robustly as they get used to them. It's kind of odd because, and in my experience, I guess the biggest concern was they felt like they were kind of being judged. But at the same time, if you can turn that around and use it as training, it's not to judge you, it's to give us some feedback on where we need to train better. Then that oftentimes kind of just changed they don't feel judged. It's more of a helpful thing for supervisors. And of course,
Thanks,
maybe make your threshold for what passes and what fails a little bit lower as well.
Thanks, Kat. I think we're caught up again.
All righty. So if we look at these guys down here, though, that even though this is closed loop, this brings it into an even bigger closed loop. Because if you think about it, you could do a risk assessment against a supplier, and that risk level could then drive how often you're auditing them. During an audit, maybe you find something that went wrong and you launch off a quality event, which could potentially launch off to a document change and then potentially launch off training. So you can see how this kind of all comes together and why I bring supplier in. Now, these two modules here, risk and supplier, are our easiest modules because you have a lot of different types of risk and you can put any kind of risk assessment in here that you want. You see here just a list of different examples that I have. When you go in, though, to do a risk assessment, you're also going to be set up, you're going to be able to set up exactly what this all looks like. So these fields here, they're always going to be there. These are optional. You will build out your risk assessments however you want them to be, or your risk matrices. So some of them might be a 4x4, some a 3x3, maybe they're all 3x3, but your axis labels are going to be changing. It's however you want to set these up. But for your users, when they're actually completing the assessment, you can see how easy it is that it's for them to fill in that information, select the risk level. Now, if it is in this low level, they obviously are not going to have to go to mitigation, which is what this opens up to. If it is in the medium level, then they can choose to go into mitigation. Obviously, if it's high level, they're going to have to go into mitigation. And when you do need to go into or choose to go into mitigation, you're going to assign the mitigation task to somebody. Now, with below here in this custom fields, these are the out-of-the-box fields. Add whatever else you want down here into the custom fields area. Plus, you can always attach and link things, just like anywhere else in master control. Now, when you go to do your mitigation, again, you can keep it very simple with the out-of-the-box fields like I have here, or you can make it more in-depth. It depends on how you want to do that. When they're done with the mitigation, they of course will move on to the reassessment because you always need to double check and make certain, hey, did the mitigation fix things? Are we still in the same spot? What else needs to be done from here? And so risk is a very easy to use module. And it makes it really nice to be able to have all of that because again, all of those fields in there, that's all reportable. So, and when it comes to supplier, if you also have supplier done, anytime or implemented, anytime you do a risk assessment against the supplier, it automatically is going to link things up in the supplier module. Now, when you think about the supplier module, keep in mind the documents that are sent through for approval, those are all handled in the documents module. The supplier module gives you a great one-stop shop type thing for all things supplier. So this right here is actually a list of things from the documents module that you have determined are materials, parts, and services. Over here, you've got, of course, all of your actual suppliers. But if you come into one of your suppliers, then you're going to have all of that information around them. just like you would expect, their name, address. This is a hyperlink right over to the risk module. This here, if you're using our supplier scorecard, that puts your supplier rating in. But as you come down here, you'll see you have these parts, materials, and services area. Anything that you link up here throughout all of your suppliers, this is what feeds that other list. And so whatever you say are materials, parts, and services, you link up here. But there's a lot of other things that we have in the documents module, and you can make this easy to get to either by just linking up a saved search here, or of course, linking them up just like you do anywhere else with attachments linked here. And attachments, of course, are also really helpful for with all the rest of the stuff that suppliers like to give us, because we always have certificates and brochures and all those other things. You can get rid of every one of those crazy filing cabinets and paper junk drawers and stuff like that that you might have around your suppliers by just having all of those attachments right here in the system. But the super nice part about having all of this there is, along with our API, if you want to push the status over to like an ERP or something, you can within that, or you can just use our reports to generate the ASL. And of course, just like in our documents module or any module that you're used to using, those reports can be sent off on a scheduled basis. And using our e-form builder, maybe you build out that inspection form, or maybe there are some other supplier monitoring forms that you like, and you can build those out as well. And when it comes to the interaction with supplier and audit, all of your suppliers are automatically an entity in audit. But with audit, you have so many other scenarios. It's not just auditing a supplier. You're auditing internally and even as well. And sometimes we audit because there is an event that happens, so we want to go audit them. And sometimes your suppliers, maybe a material supplier like corrugate material, they don't get audited as in depth as somebody that's you're auditing for one of those key materials that you need. So you've got tons of different scenarios and lots of different entities on top of your suppliers because of all those internal. You can even bring your own audits in. So when you're audited, that could be a scenario in the audit module. So you set up all of these different scenarios, and then you're going to select the criteria that goes with those different scenarios that's going to build out your audit checklist. So instead of you having to have all these different templates and, this scenario, here's a template that I built for it, and that one, and all the different criteria manually determined in there, all you do is you come into a very big list of material or criteria here, and you select what criteria needs to be used for this audit scenario or this type of audit. Then we, during the audit itself, are going to build out the actual checklist. So you don't have to worry about things like that. The best part about it is, let's say you change something in either one of your SOPs that's going to change a criteria, or a regulatory change changes a criteria, then the system's going to automatically update throughout all the checklists because you just have to change it in that criteria list. But when you're actually doing an audit, you've got great space here to record your information, high level, and your documentation, so not just your draft report. And by the way, you can put templates in here. So to create your draft report, you click this button, you select that you want it to be your final report. And it grabs all of the data from all of these tabs here. So it'll grab your summary and your scope and your observations and things like that. And it's going to pull it into that final report for you. So you don't have to put it in here and then copy and paste it into a report to send. It just automatically builds that report for you. But you also can put all of that key data that you have as takeaways from when you're auditing, whatever that might be, you just can bring it right in here as attachments. But when you're going through your checklist, it's very easy. Yes, no, NA. As you're moving through here, whatever the answer is, you can also have short answers. If at any time you need to have an observation, you just click this little button. It opens up that observation for you. It creates it for you. And of course, this is referencing where you hit the button, but you can always change this because sometimes you hit the plus on the wrong line. These are just data structures. Keep in mind, in our audit module, we do have jump starts that give you a lot of pre-configuration, so you're not having to come up with all of this on your own. So the criteria list, what's based on your industry, we will give you that jump start of the criteria. You can change it, just like you can change the tables that are going to be populating the category, the rating, and the findings. At least it gives you a starting point, so you don't have to build all that from scratch. So it makes it so that instead of like 3 to 4 months to get audit implemented, it might take 2 to 3 weeks. So a lot easier with those jump starts. The assignees, obviously, if you're doing something internally, you can assign this to somebody internally. Keep in mind, though, this also will work with Guest Connect. So you can assign this observation to somebody outside of your company. When you do that, the system will send them an email. In the email, there's a hyperlink. That hyperlink allows them to come into the workspace here to enter their own responses. So they don't have to send it to you via email and then you copy and paste it and bring it in. They can come in, add their own response and their attachments. It doesn't let them go anywhere else. They can do their own responses in this workspace and that's it. So it's a very secure hyperlink. Once this is done, then of course that hyperlink breaks. But it makes it so you don't have to go in and do all that extra stuff. You of course can edit the response if you wanted to add additional notes or if there was a follow-up email or something like that they need to do. Plus, again, if something goes wrong, you can launch off any form that you have in the system, even just a simple action item. So not necessarily something went wrong, but hey, I need you to go take care of this for me kind of thing, by just clicking this little guy right there. And of course, all of the analytics, all of the modules have tons of analytics. But the nice thing about it within your audits is you can, of course, say, hey, show me all of the observations for this supplier over the last year, 5 years, or whatever, if you wanted to do trending on a supplier to kind of, again, keep that heartbeat or that health of your suppliers just pretty much at your fingertips. So Shauna, any questions on those bottom guys there?
Yeah, so we have a question for supplier. How could it manage the scorecard or ISO cert once they are almost expired?
So you can do that as a custom field. So in the info card, then you can, of course, down in the custom fields area, you can add whatever else you want here. So I had tons of custom fields for my suppliers to include any dates, and then you can have a scheduled port running that let people know, hey, this is what's going to be coming due in the next month if you need to go back after any of their recertifications or what have you.
Got it. Thanks. And then we got a question about additional charges for the API when you reference being able to connect to the ERP system. Master Control's an API toolkit. So if you're already using MuleSoft or Boomi and you have people who know how to build those integrations, you can do them yourselves, but there is a product charge on that API toolkit, or we'll actually work with you and build the integration, but there is a charge for both of those things. And then another question has come in. How can one use the audit module to support regulatory body audits?
For when you get audited, so what I did, this is how to use the audit module for them. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to have the audit module to support when you're being audited. But if you are using it, I actually had a type. So I had PA, customer, the people that were going to be auditing us, they each were a different type. And then as far as my checklist criteria, I had general questions. Were there an observation or, even was there an observation in this area, this area, this area type thing. And then I would click the button to launch the observations off from there. And then that would help me then track them and my responses from there. And then I can generate an observation report with my templates that then I could send off to as part of my response. So I was able to manage it that way. Now, if instead that question is more in line with, or kind of to expand that question, how would you use Master Control when you're being audited? I actually had a login called Auditor, and I would just disable that user when I was in the middle of an audit. But they had the rights to view the documents that I wanted them to view. So instead of like bringing a binder full of SOPs, then I would just log in as auditor, pull up my Explorer, and they would be able to see the same SOPs right there on the screen. I would have the rights for training so that they could see the training job code statuses so that I could show them the training matrices. And then I could get into the training folders right from there. So if they said, okay, show me this group, and then once they saw that group, they said, I want to see this person, then I could show them that person. And so I actually had that in quality events. I had Explorer folders set up for my quality events. So it wasn't like I was showing them everything. It would just be released ones or easily accessible. So again, I made it so I never showed them anything they didn't want to see because I had that login user role set up for those restrictions.
Thanks, Kat. That's great. I think I've also heard you talk about how if an auditor was coming back, you were able to access what they pulled up the last
Yep.
time and have that in as a record.
Absolutely, because because I have that user set up, I could then run a report against that user to see what was it we looked at the last time. And of course, also having the audit information in my audit module, I've actually linked everything up in my audit workspace that we reviewed during the audit. So if they came back and said, well, last time we reviewed XYZ, and I was like, no, we actually did ABC. See, it's right here. So I was, okay, quality, a little bit of a control freak there, but it just really made it so audits were a lot smoother, as well as preparing for it, because I could have, make certain everything that we might have had an observation for on the last time is still buttoned up because I knew that was the first thing they'd be looking at.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a really cool trick that you can do. One last comment or question, and I think you kind of answered it, but with the eForm builder, are folks able to utilize the event analyzer with any of the eForms that they build?
Absolutely. So, and that event analyzer can look at individual forms. I mean, you can get it very granular. I want you to keep an eye on this field on this form, even if it's one that you've built, or I want the analyzer to look across all forms. So maybe you had a deviation when you were manufacturing lot 1, 2, 3. So set up an analyzer and say, let me know if a complaint, a non-conforming material, and anything is launched against lot 1, 2, 3. And then it'll let you know if it finds it.
Got it. And we actually got a few comments in Q&A where people were saying they do similar to what you said, setting up an auditor role.
It's
and
a great tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. There are a couple of questions about getting copies of this presentation. What we'll do is you can reach out to your customer account rep, and they'll help you get that. So this is available on request. And then also we are going to be having some additional lunch and learns, the quality hour. And so just check our events calendar for the different things that are coming up. We love having an opportunity to engage with you. Recently, our events group has been polling to see what kinds of topics you want to learn about. So thank you so much for coming. Have a great day. And if you need any more information, just email us at the address on this slide. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.